Hey everyone, and welcome back to Talking High Performance with Belle. Today, I want to talk to you about something that I see all the time with clients, leaders, parents, business owners, especially women. And it's not perfectionism. I feel like we talk about that a lot, and it's not procrastination. It's not confidence, but it's something far more subtle, and it's the addiction of being needed. Now, before you switch off and think that's not me, just stay with me for a few minutes because for many people, this doesn't look like addiction. It looks like being a good parent or being a supportive partner or a reliable employee, a caring friend. And that's exactly who this applies to today and why it's so hard to spot. The problem is when your value becomes tied to how much other people need you. So when your identity is wrapped up in being the helper or the organizer or the fixer. Because at first it feels good, and that's why we do it, right? And we're also helping someone. It feels meaningful, it feels important, and it feels purposeful. But over time, it can quietly become a trap that we put ourselves in, a trap that leaves us feeling exhausted and disconnected from ourselves. So this starts slowly. Most people don't wake up one day and decide that they want to be addicted to other people. It usually starts earlier. Maybe you were the responsible child, or the peacemaker, or the one who never caused trouble, or the one who held everything together. Maybe you learned that being helpful got you praise, or being useful got you attention, or being reliable got you love. And it made you feel important. And slowly, without realizing it, your brain starts linking your worth to what you can do for others. So, not who you were, but what you could do, what you could provide, what you could fix, sometimes what you could carry, or what you could solve. And so the message slowly becomes, if I'm useful, I matter. If they need me, I hold value. If I stop helping, maybe I won't be important anymore. And that belief can follow you for decades. And I know in the past it has with me. And the tricky thing about being needed is that it gives us something. And that's why we keep doing it, right? Sometimes it gives us significance, or it can give us certainty in relationships, or it gives us purpose. It gives us a role. And so we feel validated. And so every time someone says, I don't know what I'd do without you, or you're amazing, or you always save the day, or you're the only one that I can rely on, it feels good. And for a moment, we go, oh, I'm going to keep doing this. And so it's an addiction, but it doesn't last. So we look for other opportunities to help, another problem to solve. It could be another crisis to manage or another person to rescue. And before long, we're carrying everyone else's life while neglecting our own. And so how does this show up in your life? Because the cues aren't always easy. Sometimes it's obvious, but sometimes it's not. It can look like being the parent who does everything for their kids. It could be being the manager who doesn't delegate. It could be being the business owner who refuses to let go, or the friend that everyone calls when they're struggling. Or it could be the partner that always puts themselves last, or you say yes when you want to say no, or being the one that remembers everyone's birthdays, appointments, and gets disappointed when that's not reciprocated. There are all different ways that this can show up in our lives. And often you get praise for it, which makes it even harder to stop because the behavior gets rewarded, right? So we keep doing it. Yet underneath all of it, we're running on empty. And so this is the part that nobody talks about. Eventually something starts happening. You may become resentful, not because you're a bad person and not because you don't love people, but because you're giving from a place of obligation instead of choice. And you start thinking things like, why does everything fall on me? I can never do anything that I want because I don't have time. Why can't anyone else do this? Why am I the only one responsible for this? Why doesn't anyone appreciate me? And it's not the resentment that's the problem. The resentment is a signal. It's your mind telling you that you've been abandoning yourself for too long. Because people often think resentment means they need to become more patient or more understanding, or it could be more giving. But often resentment is a boundary that hasn't been set. It's a need that hasn't been expressed, or it's a life that's become out of balance. And so we feel a bit, ugh. And the addiction to being needed, it creates a cycle, it creates a loop. You help everyone, you feel overwhelmed, you become exhausted, you can't do what you want to do, you become resentful. And so you promise yourself you'll stop. Then somebody needs help and you do the same thing again and you jump straight back in. Why? Because being needed feels familiar and it feels comfortable and it feels safe, even if it's draining you. And so you continue the loop. And some people feel uncomfortable when nobody needs them. Who are they without the feeling of being needed? So who are you with no emergencies, with no demands, with no fires to put out, with no one asking for anything? And instead of feeling peaceful, you feel guilty, almost uncomfortable. And that's a sign that you've become so used to serving everyone else that you have forgotten how to serve yourself. And so a question you need to ask yourself is, who are you when nobody needs you? So who are you when you're not helping, when you're not fixing, when you're not putting out spot fires, when you're not solving, when you're not taking on everything yourself? Who is that version of you? Because so many people spend years building an identity around what they do for others, and then one day their kids grow up, or their business changes, or their relationship could end, and that role disappears, and they realize they don't actually know who they are anymore or what they want. And that's a scary place to find yourself in. And I think this is particularly relevant for women, because many women grow up carrying expectations from every direction to be successful, to build the career, to be present with the kids, to keep the house organized, to keep up the good exercise, to cook the healthy meals, to maintain the friendships, to support their partner, etc., etc., etc. And the list goes on and on and on. And so along the way, we forget who we are because we've been doing it all. And we stop asking, what is it that we actually want? Instead, we become experts at fulfilling everyone else's expectations and filling their buckets. Society's expectations, family expectations, work expectations, and the expectation of what a good mother should do, what a good wife looks like, what a successful woman does. And before long, we're living a life that looks successful from the outside, but feels really exhausting to maintain on the inside. So one thing I've learned, and I've noticed working with many high performers, is this: the most successful people aren't the ones who carry everything. They're the people who know what belongs to them and what doesn't. They help without rescuing, they support without sacrificing themselves, they know where to draw the line, and they care without carrying everyone else's responsibility, because they understand that boundaries aren't selfish. They're necessary and sustainable, because if you're constantly pouring from your cup, eventually there's nothing to give. So how then do you break free? You need awareness. You need to start noticing how often you jump in, how often you solve, how often you rescue, and how often you say yes. And when you do that, you need to ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to? Or am I doing this because I need to feel needed? The second step is allowing people to experience consequences, which can be hard to watch and incredibly uncomfortable. Been there lots of times, especially if you're a parent or a helper or a leader. People grow through responsibility, not through being rescued. So sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back. And then the third part is reconnecting with yourself. What do you enjoy? What lights you up? What do you want? What matters to you? So not to your family, not to your clients, not to your team, but what matters to you. Because somewhere along the way, many people lose sight of themselves. And the goal isn't to stop caring. The goal is to care without disappearing in the process. So if your entire sense of worth comes from being needed, eventually you'll become exhausted trying to earn your value every day. And your value isn't in what you do for people. Your value isn't in how much you carry or how much you sacrifice. Your value is inherent, and it exists before you help anyone. It exists when you're productive. It exists when you're resting. It exists when people need you, and it also exists when they don't. So my challenge to you this week is I want you to notice a situation where you normally jump in and rescue. And instead, I want you to stop and pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, is this actually mine to carry? And if the answer is no, let someone else step up. Now, yes, it will be uncomfortable, but that's where the growth begins. Because your life was never meant to be spent carrying everybody else. Your life means reaching your goals, your dreams, your energy, and looking after your well-being. And that is the greatest act of self-leadership. Caring about people without sacrificing everything while doing it. So thank you for joining me for another episode of Talking High Performance with Belle. Until next time, live a successful, purposeful, and fully charged life every day.